Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the AM show with Jay. Glad that you joined me today. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to go over some book news. We're going to go over some of the things that have been going over on the Writer's Lounge podcast that I'm a part of, and have some tunes, but most of all, do some workshopping. Got a daily prompt, and I'm going to sit here at my desk for 7 hours and do a bunch of writing and get some ideas from people and chit chat with people, and hopefully everybody can help each other out. Just kind of hang out and have a fun writing experience together. I'm just going to need a few minutes to get everything all situated here. In the meantime, you can listen to this intro, or you can come back in 5 minutes. See you then. All right, so one segment we're going to have twice a week on Wednesdays and Fridays is an update from Carl Douglas. He's a writer and a book critic. Does a really great job. A lot of videos, and it's sort of like, you know, expressing what he learns about writing as he goes along, in a very humble way, but that is always, very practical and logical, and always really good food for thought. So, in this particular case, the case of yesterday, he covered his five biggest mistakes. So, like I said, humble, and it comes from that angle, and it's really great. It's personally relatable. It's all very practical, logical. It all makes sense. There's solutions offered. Everything's really great. I really did enjoy it. So that I would definitely recommend seeing that. And so every Wednesday and every Friday, we will review a another Carl Duncan video and let you know how important it is, how much value there is there, so that you'll know if you should devote and invest in the time to go and see it. So that's what we're going to do on Wednesday and Friday. In this case, yes, you should go and have a look. And to that end, we've created a playlist. Basically, Carl's YouTube channel is pretty Spartan. So you're just going to go there, you'll hit videos and find the most recent one, or the one that we're talking about. Or as you can see, I just added, I saved that, and I'm going to add a playlist for Carl Douglas, so that you'll have an easy way to go and see the episode. If you take my word for it that it's an episode worth seeing, I'm going to make that public. Give it a little save. And there you go. So now, if we head over to our channel, Kamsa, there we are, the Writer's Lounge. If you go over to playlists, and you see that Carl Douglas is there, and there will be a nice little playlist. You can watch them all. If you're seeing this way further down the line and there's more than one video there, then you can just play all. They're all going to be good. Only the ones that we positive review that we really think are definitely worth the time are going to be on here. I suspect that 95% of them will be. Everybody has bad days, so that's going to be a tool for you to use in the future. And you can, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can even head out right now to our playlist, and you can go and check that out right now, and then come back and we'll go on to the next video. That's the objective point of this whole process that I'm doing, that we're doing. So maybe give that a try. See if that actually works. As an experiment. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Maybe you're gonna, just keep these in mind, and you have that type of mental trap, mental bear trap, that you can just store that and grab it again later, or you're gonna write it down. Whatever. Hopefully you get the most out of this. Moving on to the next creator. Another humble channel, with fairly Spartan production and everything else, which is fine. It's perfectly acceptable. Is Haley, and Haley reads books and comments and reviews, and does also a little bit of news, like what titles are upcoming, that you can see in the near future, and a little bit of background about them, and so on and so forth. So we'll head in and check today's offering under videos. So this is 10 most anticipated books of 25. Haley's lists are always going to be a little bit weighted towards horror, and that's kind of what she gravitates to, which is perfectly fine. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. But there's a lot more coverage than that, so it's generally a really good list of books, and definitely something worth checking out. So we'll go and save a playlist here. Oh, there's a playlist. Okay, tuck that in there, and then check and make sure it works, of course. And it looks like it does. Very good. Thanks a lot, Haley. There's the playlist, and moving right along. Another submission to BookTube by Ali Emons and her sister. I thought that it was a really useful video. So I'm sharing it now, but you should definitely go over to the page and like and subscribe. It's a very hard-working channel over there, very high quality production, and a lot of really great information on a very regular basis. Now, I won't necessarily say that I got something out of every point, that I'm going to try out every point, or that I necessarily agree with every point on this list of ways, 10 ways that you can write faster, but I'm going to try some of them. And I am more cognizant of some things as a result of having watched it. And so that was what I was hoping to get out of that. So I would recommend that you go and check it out. So and I'm going to stick it in a playlist here. Developmental, I think, will be the route there. All right, well, little visual glitch there, but that's what I ended up doing is a production advice folder playlist. So, yeah, if that's what you're looking for, higher production, that will be. You may find some regular additions into that playlist. It'll show you how to get more work done, make more use of your time, be a pound for pound better author. We definitely want to know what is on your read list, what you've finished, what you've just completed. Let us know what books you're either working on, like reading, or have finished reading, and just stick them in the comments so that we'll have more authors to approach that you might want to hear from, etc., for interviews or reviews or the like. Go ahead and do that, and we'd really appreciate that, and be really interested to find out what you've got in there. For me personally, right now, I've just completed Screwtape Letters because we are having a special episode on the 20th, Joey and I, where we're gonna discuss the Screwtape Letters um, as a book review, and it'll be a live stream here on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, and Rumble, and everywhere, with Twitter. So if you'd like to join us for that, if you've read the Screwtape Letters, or if you could probably get through them by then. It's fairly short work. You could probably even get through the audiobook in that length of time, and then you'd like to join the discussion about that, then please do. These books that we're reviewing so far, like what the ones we've covered so far, are on the banned list. So those are the ones like banned from that have been banned and still are in some regions. It's obviously not everywhere. So that's why that's that kind of common theme there. And then the next one we're doing in February is Catcher in the Rye. So that's the one that I'm currently reading for the specifically for the channel. Well, one of the two I'm reading specifically for the channel. And so if you haven't read The Catcher in the Rye, I won't spoil any of it for you. It's the type of book where it's been long enough in serious print and was, sort of one of those things that influences the movement of culture a little bit. So I really think that you should take that in, and you don't really need too much introduction to it. You don't need anything spoiled. I would say just go out at that one. And also reading at the same time is Dancer's series of the Malazan World series, which precludes the Book of the Fallen, and I will be today is actually or sorry, not today. Today I might be recording. Yeah, today I'm going to be recording the my review and coverage of Chapter 1, or sorry, the prologue, and then tomorrow Chapter 1. Monday, those will start coming out. I wanted to just stay at least 2 days ahead. At a time, just in case something should happen, I can at least roll the tape, and probably I'll move further and further ahead as we go. That's particularly with that series, because the chapters are significantly shorter than they would be in the main series, because the books are considerably shorter, just less ground to cover, so to speak. So, but that'll start on Monday. If you're interested in the Malazan series and you haven't read it, or the Malazan universe, and you haven't read any books in it, feel free to join us. I wanted to do one where I started right at the prequel, so as far back as you can get without getting into the one that Steve is still kind of hacking away at there, related to I can't remember the name of that war, the Tistandi, the War of Darkness, that trilogy. I guess Steve's finished that now. I'm not covering that one in this read through series. It's kind of its own separate gig. There's enough between there that it's kind of divorced from everything. It'll be mentioned throughout the rest of the books, not actually in the prequel series, and infrequently in the Book of the Fallen. So you don't really need it, but you can. But anyway, if you want to grab Dancer's Lament or get it from the library too, maybe most libraries are going to have it. The library here has most of the Malazan books, and it's a pretty small town, so you may want to grab that and join us. It'll be a lot of fun. Basically, I'll just walk through each kind of chapter every day and sort of point out the main stroke of the chapter, and mostly to point out the elements within the chapter, like the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily normally pick up on until your second or third read of a series. That's kind of the goal here, is that I can point those out, and I can point out all these little details and stuff, and about 60% of them will be Easter eggs. You won't know which 60%, so you can still have that enjoyment later on. But you really could get a lot more out of this series through read-alongs. I know I have. I did watch one all the way through till I think the fifth book for a while, and I did get extra out of that. There were things that I had not necessarily noticed, and so I think it's a very fun and useful thing to do with a series that's so vast and big and huge in scope, and it can at times be 1,000 foot over. So people miss stuff, and it's really you always have to remember it's one of those series where you are going to have questions at the end of every book, a whole bunch of questions, and you're going to have to suck it up and keep reading. That's just all there is to it. It sounds harsh, but that is what it is. That's what Steve did, so that's what we got to work with. So that is it for the currently reading corner. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Excellent. Okay, well, we're just kind of working our way along here. Trying to figure out this thing. It's a lot of moving parts, and they don't seem to want to fit together very well, but I'll get there. I will get there. I promise. So yeah, this is you know, the latest that we've got on the live stream, on our live show, and so far it's looking a little bit better. Maybe a little glitchy, laggy in places, but that's okay. And onward will function, and it will be at full functioning capacity very soon. And as you can see on screen, you can see the word count for the day. The prompt is down there at the bottom corner. Um, there'll be either an interview from the Writers Lounge up, or some book news, or some tunes, or me talking, something going on all day. So pop in for a visit when you have the time. Seems like a fun thing to do. I'm willing to give it a try. I'm sitting at this desk for 7 hours writing anyway, so what's it to me? It just means that I have to sit at this desk and write. So almost like a accountability um, procrastination prevention method, which isn't such a bad thing, I don't suspect. So yeah, we hope that you enjoy. And that we can all have a lot of fun here. At the top of every hour, we're going to run the book news. It won't always be the same one. I will update those throughout the day and put on ones from previous days that seem to be fairly important.
And that's kind of the how that'll work. So that'll be, 10 to 15 minutes at the top of every hour. We'll be doing that. So I mean, you could just check in then if you wanted to, or work around that in some way. And if there's a podcast, it's over an hour. It'll go from like the end of the news and through the next hour's news, and then finish up in the following hour. So that's the structure that we figured out so far. Totally open to any suggestions, complaints, etc. that people might have. That's no problem. So please do communicate and let me know what's working and what isn't, and yeah, we'll just go along from there. And now I see that it is the top of the hour, so we will run another set of news now. I have to hit this. Good.
Substantial.
And this.
All right, in the book news this morning, we're starting off with Daniel Green and Daniel Green's most recent fantasy update, fantasy news update, which kicks off with coverage of course, Lord Grimdark himself, Joe Abercrombie, who released in a blog for his community and fans when he was where he's at with the next book after The Devils, which should be dropping soon, I believe. I think Daniel goes into specifics there, but I think you should head over to his channel and see that if you're interested. I don't want to steal viewers away from him. I'm just here to curate and point everybody in a direction that I think is good. And my goal here is to assess episodes of these various things and say this is an episode worth seeing. Daniel does huge amounts of work, and a lot of it's really great. So if you're into the fantasy realm, sometimes it's too many videos for you to watch. So I'm here to go over it and let you know what's on each one so that you can decide if it's worth your time to go check it out. But I digress. The next thing Daniel covered was Will White's new book. This is 10th in an epic series of hard magic fantasy books. I haven't gotten into any of it yet. I can't speak for it, but Daniel does go over it in some detail to let you know a bit more information than I do. New special editions from Broken Binding on the Hyperion. That's looking pretty cool, I think. WB officially announces that they're going to go past the third Dune movie. That's exciting, but they're not going to do it with the same director, and a lot of people are concerned about that. Me not so much though, because the French Canadian director. No, I'm just kidding. Lovely director. A lot of people are concerned about that. Daniel gets into it in some detail if you're interested in that. Chronicles of Narnia is coming to Netflix, and it's a big one. Lots of money involved in that, and hopefully that will be treated correctly. Which I say as a C.S. Lewis fan. And on that topic, me and Joey will be covering The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis on January 20th. If anybody wants to join us over on the Writers Lounge podcast YouTube channel, and on our Facebook channel as well at the Writers Lounge at Facebook. And for everybody who loves all things zombie, new season of The Rest of Us coming out. And that'll wrap it up for Daniel. So I do recommend this episode if you're into fantasy at all. There's a little something there for everybody. Very well thought out and intelligently presented points of view, always from Daniel on everything. He always gives credit where it's due and is totally honest when he has criticism. This one is no exception, and it was not a slow week by any stretch. And if there's anybody who has been struggling with dialogue lately, here is one that you might want to check out. It's over on Abby Emmons. The particular video that I'm mentioning is a little bit back in their catalog about 5 months ago, and it's one that she does with her sister. They are both published authors, traditionally published authors. And they have some really interesting things to say about poor dialogue that I think everybody can sink their teeth into a little bit. And for that reason, we have created a new playlist on the Writers Lounge for dialogue advice. Here it is. should check it out. There's going to be lots of stuff in there. There isn't yet, but there will be soon. The second thing that's in there. Now, before we head over there, I just want to say that for the most part, I got a lot out of this video and I really enjoyed it. It was well made. I did turn up the playback speed to about 1.25. They're a little bit slower talkers, but that's not a big deal. You can just go down to the settings wheel on YouTube, change that to 1.25 speed, and you'll find yourself breezing through videos where maybe people take a little bit of extra time to pause like I'm not doing right now. Anyway, what they are talking about here, most of it has great value, and I agree with almost all of it. There is one point of contention there that I noted, which is when they get into the realm of the word said being used too much. And this is where the next video that I'm going to present sort of dispels some of the myths presented in this video. But nonetheless, both really good videos to see on the topic, so I do recommend you watch them both and consider them both independently of each other and formulate your own opinion based on that and do it your way. And then you might run into somebody at some point who's going to push back on that. Stand your ground. Know that you have made the right decision. So there really is a lot to break off on this video. There's a lot to chew on there, and all of it's really good. One thing in particular that I really found of interest is that this particular writer slash blogger did actually go through and check the statistics. And what those statistics happened to show was that 85% of the time, Stephen King just uses the word said rather than whispered and hollered and yelled and screamed and hissed. 85% of the time, this word said. The thing is that he sprinkles it throughout the story so that they're not all sandwiched together at one time. And sometimes when you have a higher pace, then you might use the word said more because you don't want people to have to read extra words in between the lines of dialogue or the description of the action, okay? So that's the Stephen King method. And that's the Brandon Sanderson method. And I believe it's the Joe Abercrombie method. I believe it's Grisham. Like, it's, you know, it seems to work. So I would certainly give that some consideration and definitely take a look at the video. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Mr. Sinsortis Reads is a great up-and-coming YouTube channel, 1.2 thousand subscribers. Doing very well. I do enjoy the videos. I'm watching this channel every day for reviews on books that are new that I might be interested in, but I definitely want to get some opinions first before I shell out to get a series maybe, or a longer book, or, you know, before I make that decision. It's always great to have a little bit of a review. I watch those a lot, and this is a good one. So I just wanted to give a shout out and say great job on that one, and keep up the good work, sir. And last but certainly not least, an editor over at Fantasy Writing for Barbarians, who does these shows where people send in their work. His producer gets them. The producer works on the notes, hands it to him. He gets it live as just as he begins and does this live reading. There's people in the comments commenting at the time, and he just does a great synopsis of what's going on. This one in particular is on word count, and I thought it was really great, and I think a lot of people could get a lot out of this. Even though it is specifically tailored to the fantasy audience, I think that it's a bit transcendent of genre. A lot of the themes and ideas are not genre specific. Definitely worth taking a look at if you find yourself questioning word count. And now, book news a little closer to the program itself. I want to officially announce that I will be doing a read-through slash review of the entirety of the Malazan universe, beginning this coming Monday, which would be January the 13th, I believe, and that'll be a lot of fun. And it'll be, as we're doing this show every day, each day I will be covering one chapter. I'm totally eager to have anybody who's interested who hasn't read the series yet, if you would like to join in and actually be on the show with me in the AM at an allotted time to do that, even if it's not on a daily. But if you can keep up with the series, if you can read a chapter a day, they're thick chapters. So I mean, don't bite off more than you could chew. But this will be my fourth reading, and that's because it is, by far my favorite thing that's been, put to fiction on paper ever. So right now, I would actually just like to go into the series with my critical series review of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, Tales of the Malazan World, and the first, and the whatever has come out in the series following the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I have not read. I've just kind of started on God Is Not Willing, but didn't really get much further than that yet. So it'll be starting at Dancer's Lament that I do my series, and so this review is for Dancer's Lament to the Crippled God, excluding the the Beauchelain and Corbel Brooch, little kind of side hustle thing that pops up in the middle. The most important thing to know when you get into Steve Erickson, if you're going to get into Steven Erickson's body of work, which is tremendously huge, right? The main series is 10 books, and they're all 1,000 pages plus. So it's huge, right? It takes a long time to get through. And what is important to know about the whole thing is that his profession prior to writing was as an archaeologist. He's an anthropologist at heart, university trained. He married an English lady and moved to England, and the archaeology scene in England, it's just sort of done. They've gotten everything, they've found everything. There's very little work for archaeologists there. Where he lived before, where he grew up and was born, was in Winnipeg, which is in Manitoba, Canada. And there is a lot of archaeology that hasn't been discovered because it's a great big huge area with tiny tribes and nations of Aboriginals, and there was so much to study there. But once he moved to England, there just wasn't stuff for him to do that was interesting, and so he took up the reading. Now he's moved back. He's in Victoria, BC, and he is just a wonderful person. And you can find like dozens of interviews on YouTube because he will take the time to do an interview or a discussion with anybody anytime without pay, and he just really loves community engagement. You can always find him in the wikis, you can always find him on Twitter having discussions about the series. He's very much involved in the community that's built up around his books, and it's absolutely wonderful. So on that aspect, 10 out of 10. As far as having the pedigree to do his work and that community building aspect, absolutely amazing to get into a community that's kind of steered by somebody like that. Prose. Steven Erickson has excellent prose. He is restrained by this series, the 10 books in the main series, however, because it's not a 1,000-foot overview, but it feels like that sometimes. It gives you that kind of a pace idea. You will get very small amounts of interpersonal time with the characters, but you will get enough to know them because there is very clever dialogue. The prose is subtle but not impossible to grasp. The landscape descriptions are beautiful but never over the top. The reason these books are so long because there is so much packed into them. The descriptions of particularly the things that go on in between battles. There are epic battles in this book, and the series almost begins with one. And actually, I'll roll a brief clip from Daniel Green to show you what I mean by this.
Is this where people come to start Malazan Book of the Fallen?
Yes, indeed it is. This is Malazan Book of the Fallen. Are you ready to get started?
So ready. This has been on my TBR for
ages. All right, page 1. So then the battle begins, and thousands of soldiers are dying every second. A city's falling from the sky. Whoa, what is going on right now? We don't have time for questions. Now tell me, who is Anomander Rake? Anomander, I don't know what those syllables mean. So many people are dying right now. Oh my god. Wrong answer. Oh my god, that wasn't even a Malazan book. You haven't earned being hit by a Malazan book. Now tell me in detail how the magic system in this universe works, because it's very necessary to understanding this next part. I'm only on chapter 2! That doesn't matter here. Now tell me, who's more powerful, Anomander Rake or God?
So as you can see, yeah, there are battles. There's a lot that happens in the intervening period. There's a lot of army on the march and all the interesting things that go along with that. There's a lot of there's actually more interpersonal with the people who are sort of within the cities and the places where these battles are going to occur. There's a lot of anticipation, not just on the part of the army, but on the part of the city or town or plain that they might be located at as the Malazan army approaches. It's the Malazan inspiration is not quite Rome, not quite the Normans, but a little bit of all of those. This is your typical, the Algonquin nation, the Iroquois Confederation. There's lots of these groups throughout history. It's a pattern that continues to repeat itself over and over again, and we're going to keep seeing it. So it's relevant at any point in history, and it always has context. But that's the thing. This is imperialism. This is a satirical look at imperialism from within. It's the Malazan Book of the Fallen, right? So this is right away a kind of a tongue-in-cheek poking sort of pointing to that old cliche that history is written by the victors. And I think that's what he's pointing at here, but also flying in the face of that in an interesting way, because what makes this depiction of the Malazan Empire great is that all of the people within the empire are aware that it is not the good versus the evil thing. They understand that the Malazan Empire is not perfect, but they're more that, just as Daniel said, it's about the meaning of it. It's about sometimes picking the lesser of two evils is what you have to do. There's some really great lines throughout the series regarding that. One of the great lines in the series being when one character from the Malazan Empire is talking to another and they're discussing how perhaps the Malazans will move on and leave that area to its own devices, which would mean that they would go back to some very, very brutal practices, which are worse, in fact, than what the imperial conquest was and what the imperial rule is. And there is a lot less of that really toxic things going on during the Malazan occupation. And so it's sort of juxtaposing that, yeah, this is imperialism and it's pretty harsh, but there was some really awful things going on here before that aren't anymore. And so now maybe if the Malazan Empire falls, things may go back to a little bit chaotic, but maybe they won't go back as far, because now people can remember a time when it wasn't so absolutely brutal, and they can look to that with hope, and maybe they don't let it go back to that same place again. So I thought that was a really interesting point, and that sort of summarizes how this series is approached. It is a very unbiased and extremely reliable narrative. Like, I couldn't tell you how reliable. It's absolutely a reliable narrative, like that you read about. And going throughout the series, I have favorite books and I have lesser favorite books, and that's the case with everybody. In this particular series, the closest to a consensus that you get is Memory Device. The third story, which is very interesting, it gets into right into glaciers and ice ages and things like that within this kind of universe that isn't quite like ours, in which there's a magic system, and I won't get into too many spoilers that way. As for the magic system in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, or the Malazan universe, this is a somewhat softer magic. I've never really felt that it was too soft, but some people say it is. It's not very, very specific in the function or the practice that goes into, like, the actions that you have to take in order to do the magic, like, say, is the case in Robin Hobb. There's some authors who are very explicit about the magic system. In this one, though, you know, they have the magic system is that they have warrens. So essentially, this is like slipping into another realm and then drawing magic energy from that realm. And there's something really, really interesting about the warrens that gives you a couple severe aha moments later on. One of them is in Memories of Ice, and I suspect that's why it's sort of one of everybody's favorite. There's a moment of exposition, which there are very few of in the body of work, but there is a moment of exposition in which this is kind of broken down for people a little bit to understand, in not expositionally. It isn't something that the narrator has just dropped, and it's not an info dump. It is during the course of a very realistic dialogue, but it has the effect of exposition in that it really slides a number of things into place in a very short period of time, almost like a light switch. Another interesting aspect of the Malazan series is that, and this is a point of contention with a lot of people, this is a world without a lot of prejudice. There is no misogyny, there's no patriarchy. Women and men are sort of on equal standing in most things. In fact, in just about everything within the series, and so too with racism. There is no racism in the book. There are multiple races, and they're very unique, and they're culturally specific, and they have vibrant cultures to them. But just racism doesn't enter the picture at all. In fact, like the Empress of the Malazan Empire during the series is a Napan, which is a race of people who has dusky blue skin. So that kind of shows you that, like, you know, our traditional prejudices are not present here. Now, at the same time, there is an element where it's unrealistic to say this world doesn't feature gender or racial bias. That's not something that's likely to ever happen, so there's a bit of a utopianist concept there, but I think it's done in the spirit of the thought experiment behind it, about what it would look like when that does happen, which, you know, it's slowly incrementally over time does happen. Nobody can deny that there's much less of it now than there was even, say, 20 years ago. But in this case, Steve decides not to delve into any of the activism of that. He simply just is extolling the virtue of acting without those things, rather than basically insulting everyone who lived more than 6 years ago at all times about how stupid they are, which is kind of getting a little bit tiresome. It's always kind of in there, even if it's very subtly passive aggressive. It's always got to be there, and you know, it rises to a level that I think is unnecessary and is actually breeding prejudice on a different level. We're sort of flipping racism around and still doing the same thing but calling it something else at times, and that is kind of how I feel about you know, people who take intersectionality and postmodernism to the absolute extreme. It really, and that unfortunately is a big part of the arts at the moment, and a lot of the arts lose their artistic merit in that they're being activists and trying to prove a point to the degree that you don't actually enjoy the work, unless you're just enjoying being in the echo chamber and being flooded with this confirmation bias. World building. Wow. Great maps. 2 really huge continents, and people are all over all of these continents. And then an archipelago, and Malaz is an island itself. You know, there's such a huge amount of ground covered, and it's all handled well. like I said, it gives you an impression of the landscape. It gives you an impression of the construction of the city and the general purpose that the city was built for. There's a city called Darujistan, the city of blue fire, and I won't get into too many specifics about that, but the way that that city is depicted is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. There's another city that is under siege during this story, and that city is depicted very, very well, and that siege is described in a very, very on-the-nose way that I liked a lot. There's some places that I'd like to see more of. There's some places that are kind of holes in the plot as far as the map goes. It's like we've seen all this stuff, we've heard people talk about this place, we don't get to ever go there, but I think it's left there mysteriously in that way intentionally. Ian Esselmon's treatment of the first 4 books it varies somewhat from Steven Erikson in this way, in that he does actually spend a little bit more time on the setting, and that is because the sheer volume of coverage for him is less so, because he's doing more of a coming of age piece. The first 4 books in the prequel series are more of a coming of age piece than an empirical sword and board, dragons and high seas adventure. It just has a little more time and a little more ability to look at things specifically. The Easter eggs in this series are everywhere. They're absolutely great, particularly with if you are going to start with the prequel series before the main books, which you should, because it will actually help you. Ian C. Esselmont, what he really does here for Steven Erikson that's amazing is he takes and he attaches a thread to all the various Easter eggs throughout the series, the things that people really, really wondered about. Ian Esselmont went through all of those complaints, all of those criticisms, all of those critiques about these mysterious things that people wanted to know more about, and he tied them into this prequel series in an absolutely beautiful way. So if you go through that prequel series, take absolutely nothing for granted. Anything that would be on a t-shirt is certainly an Easter egg that is tying to something in a future book. Stop, have a look, take a smell of the roses before continuing on, and commit it firmly to memory so that when it comes up in the main series, you are able to recall, oh yeah, I remember that one. I can't give you any examples because, again, wicked spoiler alerts would occur in that case, and that I shan't do. The plot of the series is very good. For the most part, it's chronological. There are a couple of out-of-sequence books. You can adjust the reading order, and I may do that. I haven't quite made up my mind about that, of a couple of books, and it actually makes a little more sense that way, and you sort of are spoiler-proof that way. But for the most part, it's for a 10-book series. It's as chronological as it gets. The plot is a 6-act structure. They're very, very long chapters. They're almost, I wouldn't quite say they each have a plot like a short story, but they're certainly long or longer than a short story in each chapter. They're very long, the chapters, in a good way. Usually you don't even notice, but part of the reason for that is that there's so many POVs. There's multiple POVs throughout the books, and so he spends a lot of time with each POV when it's their turn at the plate, and that is so that you don't feel like you were cheated out of understanding that character better. You get a really good day-to-day, what do they like when they're bored, what do they like when they're excited, when they're scared, etc., etc. You get that in spades, and there's a few characters that you get really a lot of throughout the series, particularly with what I would call the main POV, but I'm not going to tell you who that is because, spoiler alert, it will take you probably until the 7th book to realize who the main POV is. That might bother you. Maybe you don't want a story where that's actually the case. They don't get any more extra time than anyone else until you get really late in the series, and then they are very, very central. So that's it. That's a really interesting part. And there's actually, you know, there's a couple really strong supporting characters that are holding up that character, and they are often seen together within the series. So, and you will enjoy them. They're a wicked crew that you're going to enjoy a lot of. I don't know why I'm saying wicked all the time. It's like Boston in here. I don't get it. Anyway, that's sort of the broad stroke, 1,000-foot overview, my review of the series. It's a 9.2 out of 10. Once I take all of those things into account, it's that good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have read it 3 times at however many million words that is. I knew at one point and told Joey, but I can't remember it anymore. That's the Malazan Book of the Fallen. As I said, I'll be going through, doing one chapter a day. Basically, not providing spoilers, just saying, you know, these are the things that happened in this chapter, and highlighting things that may or may not be Easter eggs, and they may or may not tie into the story later. Just interesting things that you might think about as you're reading them. And sometimes what I find with these types of series, if I've read through a series once, I will watch these read through series, because it gives me a lot more perspective, and I can walk away from that having almost read it 3 times, right? Because I would probably get all that if I read it enough times. Probably every single one of those things, because I'm reading it across a decade, right? I think it's 15 years since I picked up a Malazan book for the first time. I am a completely different human being now than I was 15 years ago. Totally different. So on this read through, I'm going to pick up more things. But the goal is there, if you don't have that type of time to really commit to reading, and you wanted to read the series one time and get a lot of more out of it without like going through the series any slower than you should, then this is kind of going to be the environment for you. These are going to be in every single library. I live outside tiny town. Most of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, like 7 out of 10, are sitting in this library right now. So you can totally do that. The ebooks, they're really, really great audiobooks. They're really dense for audiobooks, and there's a lot of character voices, and they're really well done by Stephen Pacey. Well, there's one guy does the first 2 books, and then the rest by Stephen Pacey in the main series, and then there's a different narrator for the prequel series. So there's 3 different ones. All of the audiobooks are great. I have them all, and I've enjoyed them. So, you know, I've read through 3 times, and then listened to the audiobooks here and there, doing dishes, doing gardening, walking up in the mountains, whatever. It's one of the things that I'll just be like, yeah, I feel like To the Hounds, you know, and that's a 42-hour audiobook, and so that means that's my next, like, 2 weeks of little blocks of time, right? So I haven't got a chance to do that because I've been pretty busy, and I've been listening to a lot in order to provide the show, but I'm going to go through and do it reading, because I can actually read faster than on an audiobook. You can read faster than you can speak. Even if you speak really fast in Virgo like me, you can still actually read faster than that. So it is faster to read also. That's an important thing to note. The audiobook isn't the right way to go for this read through if you decide to go that way, because you may not get through the chapter of the audiobook. You know, it will sometimes take up to 2 hours. You may not get 2 hours where you can be blocked up from the world listening to something, and you won't be picking up names and stuff. So I do recommend that you read through it. That's all I've got to say. Hopefully I'll see you on Monday, or at some point throughout the series, or you can back watch it on the Writer's Lounge. I'll put a playlist there. There'll be probably 800 or 900 episodes. I'm not sure how many chapters. I think actually I heard 1,100 chapters. So, you know, that's like 4 years. I don't know how far we'll get into that. It really depends on how much people like it. Anyway, that's all there is to it. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.